surprised when I heard that impact management and evaluation have not been the topic of conversation at FIX until now, and I hope that the conversations today will actually be a turning point. There are a lot of sessions at the FIX Summit that are dedicated to mobilizing capital for impact, but we know that capital by itself is not enough. I was actually at an event yesterday organized by EDFI and GSG Impact that deeply resonated for me, that financing is only a means to the end. So when we really think about our work, as we are mobilizing capital, it's really critical that we center in impact management and evaluation so that every dollar that's mobilized is leading to intentional, measurable, sustainable, real-world outcomes. And that's where impact management and evaluation come in, right? So the question we are going to be asking today is, can impact management and evaluation be a driving force for achieving both financing and outcomes at scale? And can PDBs have a proactive, meaningful role towards the end? And if the answer to either of those questions are not yes, I think we have a lot of work to do urgently. And I hope that today's conversation will spark some ideas and pass towards action for that. So the goal for the session today are both to talk about why, so the case for PDBs to strengthen, align, and collaborate on impact management and evaluation towards achieving the SDGs, and also how can this be operationalized at project, portfolio, and institutional levels. And because we have amazing speakers lined up today, maybe we'll be aspirational and talk a little bit about collective action that's needed to drive system-level change and really mobilizing the market. So to inspire us, I'm very grateful to have leaders from our two organizing entities. So Mr. Remy Rihoud, the chairman of the Finance in Common Executive Committee and also CEO of the AFD, who will be providing welcome remarks to everyone. And also Ms. Thoraya Tricky, Director of International Partners at EIB Global Directorate, who will help us frame our thematic conversation with a panel that will be followed by those two speakers. So let's get started, and please welcome to the stage Mr. Remy Rihoud.
Thank you so much, dear Johi. Thank you. Good to see Thoraya as well with us and all participants of this first panel in the morning here in Cape Town. First serious discussion within Finance in Common about impact measurement at the perimeter of Finance in Common. So really, on behalf of AIIB, DBSA, all participants, organizers of the Finance in Common Summit, I have the honor to chair. I wish you a warm welcome and express how eager we are to hear from you, learn from you about this very important issue. Of course, this is also something I am experiencing as the CEO of Agence Française de Développement, AFD. In France, we have increased attention to impact measurement. Of course, we have to be accountable to the public financing. We are providing to our clients and partners, and that's the reason why we decided, especially last year, to put a sharper focus on rigorous measurement and management of our development results. We agreed before our board of directors to a new monitoring and evaluation policy that was adopted last year. We also set our business model, I would say, economic model, funding capacity linked to impact measurement. 60% of our refinancing on the market now is attached to sustainable debt, sustainable bonds, and investors are buying actually the impact our institution is providing. And of course, yes, we are proud we signed the OPIM commitment, like 184, if I'm right, organizations. So Joey, of course, this is the coalition, the place where all the public development banks and other private actors especially can gather to discuss methodology, because we need to expand the group. And at the time, of course, after having experienced ourselves, reach, I think, common language, common standards about impact measurement. So this is a discussion, you know, we have in Europe, beyond France and AFD, out of political necessity, but also because it's becoming more and more regulatory imperative to avoid and fight against green and impact washing. And this is fixed. I know that this is a discussion that is happening in many, many countries, including emerging markets. I want to mention what's happening in Brazil, in Rwanda, in Indonesia. We will learn from the Chinese experience as well. And this is a discussion we have, especially within the IDFC club, with CAF, with DBSA, with many others. So my point is, let's extend the discussion, create the momentum behind the impact measurement, not only for defensive reasons, but really for good and for offensive reasons. So I stop here. Of course, we will have a final communique of this Finance in Common Summit. So the conclusions of your discussion during this session are most welcome. If you can add a sentence or two in the communique or its annex, you are most welcome. Have a good discussion. Thank you.
Good morning, dear colleagues, esteemed panelists, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to be here with you today, representing the European Investment Bank, to reiterate our commitment to impact measurement. For once, we will not be talking about scaling up investment, but how we are going to change people's life and how we can make finance work for people and the planet. We know that the world is at turning points. I'm not going to start listing all the challenges that we are facing and the negative headlines that we are seeing in the press every single day. But as public development banks, as impact investors, we have both a responsibility and an opportunity to shift from financing growth to financing just and sustainable growth. That requires not just scaling up investment, but ensuring that every dollar, every euro that we mobilize is delivering meaningful impact. Of course, good intentions are important, but they're not sufficient. We need stronger systems, better data, and shared principles to ensure that impact is deliberate, measurable, and accountable. This is why at the EIB, we are working with our partner multilateral development banks to advance joint impact evaluations and results framework, align key performance indicators, particularly in biodiversity and nature finance, where the frameworks remain extremely fragmented, strengthen monitoring and evaluation practices to ensure lessons translate into better investment decisions. A critical step in this journey has been our commitment to the operating principles for impact management. As a founding signatory in 2019, the EIB recognized that global standard for impact investing is essential to ensuring transparency, credibility, and trust. Today, we have about 184 institutions that have signed these principles, including asset managers, development finance institutions, public development banks, who have joined this movement. Today's panel includes 3 signatories, and we are very keen to hear from them about their experience and how they see the way forward. But I'm hoping that today's conversation will also spark and inspire other public development banks to join this movement. And why not also set up a coalition as part of the FIX that is focusing on impact management, strengthening our collective commitment to making impact a systemic, measurable, and transformative force in development finance. Some of my colleagues like saying, if it's not posted on LinkedIn, it doesn't exist. I can argue that if it's not measured, it doesn't exist. Hence the irrelevance and the importance of having clear impact measurement framework and standards. I'm particularly happy, as has been highlighted by our moderator, that the theme of impact investment and impact measurement is put at the center stage of our conversation today, because very often we focus on how we get from the billion to the trillion. This is a unique opportunity to challenge ourselves, align our efforts, and ensure that finance truly serves sustainable development. To conclude these small remarks, I would like to borrow on the words of a South African proverb that says, and I do apologize to all the South Africans in the room for my pronunciation, Indlela ibuzwa kwaba fambili, which means the way forward is learned from those who have gone before. We are fortunate to have with us today experts and leaders who have already pioneered impact investments. I look forward to hearing from our panelists, learning from their experiences, and working together to turn insights into action. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rihu and Mr. Ki. Can you hear me? Perfect. So we are very lucky to have a fantastic panel representing PDBs, MDBs from different regions, including right here in South Africa, as well as an asset manager's perspective. So moving from why to how, we'll get to hear their institutional journeys, some concrete examples, and lessons learned from them. So I would love for each panelist to introduce themselves, your organization and role, and also briefly talk about how impact management and evaluation are embedded in your organization's strategy and investment processes. And if willing, please feel free to share your top priority in those agenda as well. So about 2 to 3 minutes for each panelist, and we'll start with Ms. Yang Dongning, Vice President of the Export-Import Bank of China.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Yang Dongning. I'm the Vice President of the Export-Import Bank of China. It's a great honor to be here at the 5th FIX call hosted by the DBSA and AIIB. I believe this highly important summit will help build stronger international consensus to address global challenges. And thanks to the AFD and EIB for having me on this panel to discuss investing for impact towards just and sustainable growth. At China Exim, our mission is to promote international economic cooperation and build a harmonious world. We firmly believe that finance should serve the real economy and people's livelihood, which aligns perfectly with the theme of the session. In our practice, from the micro level, we provide financing that aligns with the long-term goals of the developing countries that helps to achieve industrialization, that enhances capacity for self-sustaining development. And on the project level, we prioritize those boost livelihoods and safeguard nature. We focus on balancing economic, social, and environmental benefits. So that's a brief introduction. Let me turn the floor to my fellow panelists, and I'm looking forward to learning from all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Johi. Good morning, everyone. And I don't see another South African on the panel, so let me welcome you to Cape Town, those coming from outside. And I represent an organization called the Industrial Development Corporation. It's not a PDB in the real sense of how you've defined it, but it is a state-owned entity that provides funding for industrial development purposes. And in that sense, we have actually aligned ourselves to the OPIM principles, even though we're not members. So as a state-owned entity, we obviously have to align ourselves to the policies of government. And the South African government has a policy framework that they've developed, an M&E policy framework that they've developed, which is meant to be used at various levels of government with very clear reporting timelines, which is meant to support the medium-term development plan, which is a 5-year instrument. The one thing, though, obviously, that is a challenge with government plans is that they are very much abstract. And so you need to find your space as an institution and carve out what is relevant for you. But what is important, I think, for us is policy alignment to ensure that we are aligned to the M&E framework at a national level. And hopefully that lends itself in what we do in part implementation and achievement of our of SDGs. So I think just framing where we are and where we come from, it's important to keep that in mind. So I look forward to this session and to deeper into what we do as an institution. Thank you.
We have 2 multilateral development banks represented here today as well. So starting with Ms. Alejandro Botero from CAF.
Thank you, Johi, and thank you very much for this invitation and for AFD and IEB. I love the fact that we're opening FIX talking about this, as you were saying, you know, how are we really going to strengthen and catapult impact and monitoring to talk about lives, less about money and more about lives and impact that we have. So just as a brief overview, CAF was founded over 50 years ago, and right now we have 22 member countries, Latin American and Caribbean countries. We have no donor countries, so it works more as a cooperative in general, and it was largely founded to integrate Latin America. So for the first 50 years, we were mainly an infrastructure bank. And then in 2022, the countries got together and decided to give us a vouch with a 7 billion capitalization increase. At that moment, we were 19 countries, but it wasn't just 7 billion because we have to have a cause. And so the strategy is to become the green bank and the bank of social inclusion in Latin America. That comes with certain measurable outcomes, that 40% of our approvals have to be green. We have to double the private sector portfolio. We have one balance sheet where 90% is sovereign, 10% is non-sovereign. We have to work more with subnational organizations. We have to increase mobilization so that at least 1/3 of operations have mobilizations. And so this was the general strategy, and it was a big culture sort of change for CAF, because First, we were an infrastructure bank. We respond very much to each of our member countries' demands, and now we also have to incorporate the strategy and these shared objectives. This, of course, entailed organizing our first multi-annual strategy that has these indicators, not only for the operations, but also, for example, for performance indicators for the people, for our functionaries. And so we've had to have a whole culture change when we're talking about how do you include impact and measurement and evaluation into the culture. We've had to do this since 2022 to be able to realize our strategy. And so with this objective and this capitalization, we had to reorganize. And I am, as Impact and Planning Development Manager, we have impact measurement, strategy, budgeting, and some logistics under the same umbrella. And what's interesting there is that you really have to have a transversal approach to monitoring and evaluation and to measurement in everything we do, in the strategy, in the budgeting, and that helps really to have that integrated approach to be able to, overcome these ambitious goals that we have set. Thank you.
Thank you. When we talk about impact, we often focus on measurement and reporting and evaluation, but it's a great reminder that it has to start from strategy, and the culture of organization really matters in thinking about impact. And please, Mr. Gabriel Azevedo at the IDB Invest.
Thank you so much, and good morning to all. I want to start by echoing what Toraya and Alejandra just said. It is fantastic that we are starting this summit speaking about impacts, not necessarily about increasing volumes. And I think that's critical when we look at the world moving forward. I work at the IDB Invest. IDB Invest, part of the IDB group. We have 48 member countries, and we operate in Latin America and the Caribbean with the private sector. IDB Invest was a pioneer on impact measurement. We have a self-imposed limit. We have a scoring tool that's called Delta, many of you know. And we have decided from day one that we would not finance projects for which Delta does not reach a certain threshold. It doesn't mean that's a bad project. It just means that it's not a project that's leveraging all the impact that we can lever. We have an end-to-end approach, which is very important to highlight. And our end-to-end approach means that every project is looked at from its impact, from structuring to supervision to evaluation and to learning. And I think that's a unique characteristic of our approach. Our scoring tool, Delta, is estimated at entry, but it is updated every year based on what's taking place with the project. So the Delta at entry may increase, may decrease, may stay the same. But the beauty of that, by looking at our impact measurement on an annual basis, we are able to adjust the ways and help our clients to improve what they're doing if the project is not achieving its development objectives. So we don't have to wait until the end to realize that the objectives were not met. Just in conclusion, I just want to take 30 seconds to talk about our emerging priorities. Upstream work is one of our emerging priorities. No, we are working with our clients to build capacity on the private sector and with fund managers in Latin America and the Caribbean. So it's a medium and long-term process there, because this will pave the way for impact capital to flow into our region as part of our originate-to-share model that I'll be able to talk about a little later. The more we can contribute to share standards in impact management and capacity building, the more capital we can mobilize towards LAC, and this is our main strategic priority at this moment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gabrielle. IDB Invest really demonstrates the role of PDBs in building capacity for impact management within your investees and clients through your technical assistance. Last but not least, we have an asset manager represented here who's a leading impact investor and also sits on our advisory board. So thank you. Julie Wallace.
Hello, everyone. My name's Julie Wallace. I'm with Leapfrog Investments. Sort of echoing the other speakers today, thank you so much for inviting us to join you today. Leapfrog Investments was founded 18 years ago. We just had our birthday. And we are a private equity investor focused on growth companies across Africa and Asia. Many of our investors are multilateral development finance institutions. Our strategy focuses on financial services, healthcare, and climate. And we're primarily investing in low and middle income countries. And we're primarily investing in companies that target lower middle income consumers, trying to help them have better quality products and services. And increasingly, we've been focusing more on a just transition and some climate financing as well. Impact, so we're an dedicated impact fund. We were started focusing on impact. So from the very beginning, impact intentionality is a core part of our investment thesis. So everything we do, impact is at the core. And we've really drawn upon the open process to embed and integrate across our entire investment cycle. So we'll be talking about that more a little bit later. Thank you, Joey.
Thank you for that introduction. So going from kind of why to how now in depth, what we want to understand is what does good look like in impact management practice? And how does robust and harmonized and transparent impact management practices can actually serve as an enabling market infrastructure for growing impact investing in the ecosystem? So we'll go back to maybe the two MDBs around the table who are both founding signatories to the impact principles. If you can speak to kind of the motivation of coming together and aligning on your impact management practices, and how has that actually influenced your internal process, as well as in working with your co-investors and investees in the ecosystem? I know, Gabrielle, you touched on it a little bit, but would love to hear more on both of your experiences. Whoever wants to start first.
Thank you, Johi. No, this has been actually quite a transformative journey from signing OPIM in 2019, because when you sign, the Principle 9 really makes a difference in the culture change of an organization. At least it did for us, because it really forced us to include, not only in terms of norms and internal regulations, but also in terms of the culture, how we talk about measurement and impact. Because since we have to have an independent evaluation, since we have to report how we're doing, it really becomes more than an internal project, a way of operating within CAF. So even though we've always been a development bank and we wanted to foster sustainable and regional growth, from 2019 onwards, impact has been at the forefront. And we've sort of had a journey, like Luis Gabriel was saying, trying to incorporate it from beginning to end. So we started, it was interesting. The reason why we joined OPIM was because of the impact investing group from the private sector. They're the ones who pulled us onwards. And from then on, it really went to more transversal to all types of non-sovereign operations, credits, guarantees, etc. We're including the impact and management. And this was catapulted with a $7 billion capitalization to really see how we could include it transversally. So from beginning to end, we have at the beginning we have a pre-score when an operation comes into the inventory, and that includes sort of maturity and some type of additionality. This didn't exist before. And after that, we have an internal measurement score, actually inspired by with IDB Invest's tool as well, where we measure the SDG gap, the additionality, how it really aligns with regional strategy, and that same tool and scoring measurement happens throughout the life of the administration of the operation, and we close the operation with an ex post evaluation, which we used to do randomly until 2 years ago, and now we do ex post evaluations for all operations. What is interesting is that we now have instilled it for all operations. We have it was started last year, we have about 104 operations in place, and it helps us learn, for example, which instruments have the most impact. So, for example, guarantees and AB loans score very highly on impact because they help mobilize resources and they do attend some markets that are not usually attended. Corporate loans, less so. And that really helps us understand to have, sort of better recommendations when we're looking about a potential investment portfolio. So I do think it's made a huge difference in terms of our culture. It's very important also to, I think, work together and have the same measurements, as Amy was saying, systematic. And I think it really matters when we talk about the regional and country level impact because, and again, to why we're talking about people and not money, we all know that the SDG gaps are very big and we're not meeting them. But in Latin America, there's a special it's a situation that's even more dire for the social indicators. We're doing pretty well on the climate indicators. In the social indicators, in terms of inequality, in terms of poverty, in terms of innovation, we still have a big gap and it's not really growing.